I think it's very telling when you review a hi-fi product, you sit down to listen to it in your critical thinking audiophile work mode. But then a couple of songs later, you're nice and relaxed and you're in more of a listen to music for pleasure mode or mindset. And there really is a big difference there. And the Audiolab 9000N just happens to be here at a time when I've got the speakers set up really nicely with a subwoofer, good subwoofer supporting them. That's all perfect. And I've got an outstandingly good amplifier here at the moment. But as we all know with a hi-fi system, the digital source, the DAC, and especially the preamplifier are all critical to how that hi-fi system is going to sound, and I've been using the 9000N for all three of those duties. So it's had to hold up its end of the bargain, otherwise that music magic illusion that we appreciate as audiophiles of course will deteriorate fast, but it hasn't. I think the 9000N sounds great. Its build quality is very much an Audiolab, its sound quality and features is very much a 9000 range Audiolab, and I think it's probably my favorite Audiolab to date. But in a modern music streaming digital world, with a retail price of just shy of £2,500, someone might question that when they can get a lot of the same functionality and features from maybe a Wim product that costs less than £250, and the same and more features from an Eversolo product that costs around £750, so a hell of a lot less. And that is a question that I've been interested in and I've been looking at over the last few weeks, so stick around if you'd like to know the answer to that. And the Audiolab 9000N is an interesting product because it's a collaboration project between, of course, Audiolab and Lumen. And Lumen are a high-end streaming software platform and hardware manufacturer. And I asked about this and I was told that this is a genuine collaboration project that goes much deeper than Lumen just providing software for Audiolab. And this is a new and a not new thing really. It's definitely new working with Lumen. I think Audiolab are the only company to do that. But they are also not new to outsourcing maybe their streaming smarts, because in the 6000 and 7000 range of products, Audiolab use DTS PlayFi. And DTS PlayFi is kind of a universal thing that a lot of manufacturers can use. So that means that a consumer can build a multi-room audio system at home with lots of different manufacturers' products, so long as they all feature DTS PlayFi. Now, the 9000N doesn't feature DTS PlayFi quite on purpose, so this is really quite a different product. It's designed to be a 2-channel high-end hi-fi music streaming source, DAC and preamplifier. And in a way it does feel quite stripped down compared to some of the competitor products that I have had here recently that seem to offer a lot more features. But I think features are only important when they are useful features. I would rather have a product that has less features, but all of those features are important to me and they're all the best that they can be, rather than a product that has all of these features that I'm never going to use. But obviously you might see that differently. And one thing that did strike me straight away about the 9000N is that it feels more like a hybrid music streamer, because it still has strong traditional hi-fi product feel about it, because a lot of the options are only accessible via the 9000N itself. You press in the control wheel, scroll left or right, and you can access lots of important options such as the DAC filter settings, of which there are 5 to choose between, the screen settings for brightness or what we want the screen to show us, 2 different types of digital meters, or maybe album art, which I was very happy to see here. And this is all very familiar, as it's almost the same as with the 9000A, except now we have album art. Well done, Audiolab. But before any couch potato audiophiles start to panic, you can access all of this from the remote control without having to get up. And the form factor of the 9000N is also very familiar if you are used to the 9000A. So you could easily make the pairing look nice on your furniture at home. And if you're familiar with one, you'll likely be familiar with the other. And if you like one, you're likely to like the other. And on the rear, are likely all of the connections someone will need, but that depends on what your expectations are because it does feel quite limited. There is both single-ended and balanced analog outputs for connecting to an amplifier. I like that. There are coaxial and optical digital outputs for connecting to an external DAC. There is a LAN network connection plus an aerial for wireless connectivity, and USB sockets for connecting to a computer or playing music from a storage drive. And that is about it, but that would be enough for me. I tried to open the 9000N up to take a look inside to show you the internals, and I got the sides off, the top off, but I still couldn't access the internals, so I gave up at that point. And you can do a quick Google search if you're interested to see what you get and what's built inside. And for the main support, the 9000N will give you access to Tidal Connect, Spotify Connect, Qobuz, internet radio. There's also what will be room ready. The certification's happening at the moment. And I was told that there's an update in the pipeline which will provide support for Tidal Max, which is good for me because I'm a Tidal user, but also Amazon Music HD and Plex, if that's important to you. The DAC in the 9000N is an ESS Sabre 9038 Pro, which is great, and it will support pretty much all file types up to DSD 512. And there's no headphone amplifier. Fantastic. The dedicated app for the 9000N is imaginatively called Audiolab 9000N, so you shouldn't mistake it for anything else. For those of you who will not be using Roon when it's ready, see what I did there, will of course be very interested in the app, and it's pretty good, although I do have some niggles with it. It's a simple app to use in the main, but it did take me a bit of time to work out how best to use it or the way I would like to use it. Accessing Tidal was straightforward and easy enough, and then getting into my music collection was the same. And from here I could browse albums easy enough and add them to a play queue and keep going back to that as I like to do. And then there were three things about the app that I really liked. Firstly is that play queue, which always remains present unless I chose to clear it. And that's something that I think is missing from some other apps that I use. I like keeping a list of all the music that I've been listening to so I can go back and listen to it again on other days because my memory is terrible and I always forget what I was enjoying last time. Another thing I really liked is that when I go into my favourite albums and choose how I want those albums to be displayed, whether it's by artist name or I prefer to use recently added, well then that organisation always stayed there rather than me having to keep selecting it every time I enter Tidal. So that is something that I definitely like and it's missing from other apps. And the third thing is the easy access to a search bar. So it's very quick to just punch in a name of something and go and find music. Rather than with other apps, I find I have to and fro between different pages to access that search bar. So these are small things, but they definitely make a difference day to day. And the overall user experience here is pretty good. It's pretty fast and slick, although you can see some buffering of the album art, but it's fast enough to not be annoying. Then we have a set of options which are mostly for how the app behaves, and at first I looked at this and it didn't make any sense to me, but after a day or two of using the app the options made a lot of sense and I realised it was mostly just basic tailoring of how I wanted the app to behave. Watch out for the double tap to play from the playlist option because I selected that by mistake and then couldn't work out why songs wouldn't play when I was selecting them. Much profanity later, I worked out where I'd gone wrong and changed that back. One thing I found very useful was the volume control within the app and the fact that there is the option to disable my phone in my use case from going into its screensaver. So when I'm streaming music, I always have quick access to the app and quick access to the volume control. So overall then I don't have too much to grumble about with the 9000N app. It's very functional, it works really well. After a couple of days of using it I felt confident and comfortable doing everything that I would need to do. However, I think being critical of the situation, I think given the competition, I think graphically it feels maybe a little bit limited, again compared to that competition. And it could be just small things. I quite like an app that gives me options for maybe light and dark mode so we can have a darker background. And I think then Music album art covers, they pop a bit more, I think, off of a darker background. So that's just a personal preference thing. When I think about apps that I've used recently, and in particular the Eversolo app, because that really is lovely. It's a really lovely, graphically lovely app. As an example of when you access music through Tidal. With the Audiolab app, it feels very functional. You select Tidal, you select your music, you press play, and you're done. Whereas with the Eversolo app, the process between selecting Tidal and selecting your music feels a bit more feature rich, like there's more to go and explore and there's more to go and do. So like you're supposed to enjoy that process of selecting Tidal, finding your music and pressing play just that little bit more. The Audiolab app feels more press Tidal, press music, press play, listen. Different kind of user experience. And I think if the app from Audiolab was a bit more graphically nicer, a bit more polished, a bit more colourful maybe, or with a little bit more to it, I think it would make the overall user experience just that little bit more polished. Now we need to talk about sound quality, and this is where a product like the Audiolab 9000N should really be able to show you a difference, a clear difference between some of the more affordable options that are on the market. And that is something that I've definitely been looking at, and I've got a really good system here set up really well, where I was able to do a very meaningful comparison between the 9000N and the Eversolo A6. Now, of course, there's a huge price delta here between them, and some of you will say, why not compare it to the Eversolo A8? Well, I don't have an A8 here. I couldn't do it. So this comparison is more about what do we get for our £750-ish price tag, and how much better is the Audiolab 9000N at £2,500? How much better is it really, or is it diminishing returns? And to clarify, the 9000N was being used as the digital source, streaming music from Tidal, also as the DAC and the preamplifier, going into the Griffin Essence Pure Class A stereo power amplifier, into the Mission 770 speakers supported by a Rel Classic 98 subwoofer. And I was using the hybrid DAC filter mode because I thought this sounded the best. And this system sounded awesome. Like I mentioned before, I just kept wanting to listen to more and more music. And what I really like about the Audiolab 9000 range now of products, I've listened to two of them, they both do the same thing, is that they strike a really nice balance between that Audiolab forgiveness, like a bit more graceful ease on the music, not punishing to the music. But the 9000 does that, but takes the quality level up. So there's really good everything, good vocals, good tonality, good timing, good bass, good treble detail, good energy. It's all balanced really nicely. And I think the 9000 does that significantly better than the 6 and the 7000. And in this system, vocals in particular sounded big, warm, and just lovely. Even sibilants in some songs, which I am really sensitive to, sounded smooth and sweet and pleasing. When does sibilants ever sound pleasing? And I was getting excellent soundstage width and depth with a real sense of occasion, like you're looking at music being played and not just listening to music in a room. That is what I call high-end sound. And the music was timed excellently, but not so well as to make the music sound etched. There was always a little bit of that Audiolab forgiveness, so even rougher sounding music was very palatable in the Audiolab kind of way. Smooth, but not smoothed over too much. And then I was getting a really nice and full bass, mid-bass, warm, nice and warm overall sound. And that to me is right up my alley. A big, strong, warm, powerful, bold sound that's got really nice sound staging, a really nice vocal, treble details that are clear, but also just that little bit softer and a little bit sweeter. And I would say the whole presentation was just that little bit sweeter. Being critical of the sound, I would say the extremes, the top end extreme and the bottom end extreme, are a little bit polite, and the overall sound is also quite Audiolab polite. I'm sure anybody who's listened to Audiolab will know what I mean by that. But the 9000N, like I said, it does that, but without they're seeming like there's a compromise anywhere else. We get smoothness, sweetness, but still with good energy and difficult to fault. It's a very, very enjoyable sound. And in isolation, I was a very happy audiophile, but it's always a comparison that tells you the truth. So I swapped in the Eversolo A6 and again used it as the source, DAC and preamplifier and tried to match everything the same. So use the same DAC settings. Straight away, that very lovely screen with its very impressive animations, particularly the VU meter animation, it definitely hits a different kind of emotional note. And I preferred the app experience as I mentioned before. But being honest, and this might upset a few people, but I feel it's important to be honest, I actually couldn't listen to music for more than about 15 minutes with the Eversolo without wanting to turn it off. And that's not because the Eversolo sounds bad, because it definitely doesn't. It's just because the delta was so big between it and the 9000N, and it had raised my expectations so much. And the sound was so different, I just wasn't feeling it from the Eversolo A6. And that is because I'd lost a lot of what I was really enjoying. So the sound was now more two-dimensional rather than rounded and three-dimensional. It was kind of mechanical sounding as well, like the flow, the timing of the music. And the timing from the A6 is good, but it doesn't have this nice, smooth, sweet, inviting type of timing. It's more mechanical. Here's all the information, have all the information, where the Audiolab, it's like, here, have the information nice and pleasingly. And there's a difference. There's a really big difference there. The vocals from the A6 was, this lovely lush, especially for female, lovely lush female vocals of the Audiolab was now with the A6, it was a bit gritty and just a bit, again, mechanical and just not as nice. But a big difference, and a big obvious difference, was how the big, bold, warm sound that I was getting from the Audiolab was gone, and it was now a much leaner, much thinner sound from the Eversolo. So look, I don't want to hate on the Eversolo. That's not my intention. There's a huge price delta here. And I think for, its price, £750, it's a lovely thing. It sounds good. But there can be a really big difference between what it delivers and the 9000N, a chasm of type of difference. Now, interestingly, when I took the subwoofer out of the system and took away what that was adding, the difference was still there, but it definitely wasn't quite as dramatic. So that just shows to me how important, getting a system really balanced really very nicely and making sure you have lots of the right amount of bass in the system. So with the subwoofer in the system, everything balanced really lovely. Like I said, the difference was really clear, and it easily justifies the price delta. I know some of you will still ask the question, how does the 9000N compare to the Eversolo A8? Don't ask me at the moment. I don't know. Maybe I'll get a chance to test this in the future. I'm sure some of you will be interested to know, how does the 9000N compare to the Win Pro Plus? Well, I've already compared the Win Pro Plus to the Eversolo A6. And if you'd like to know about that, check the A6 review out. And the whole time you're watching that review, remember how much better I said the 9000N sounds compared to the A6, and that will answer that question for you. So to conclude this review then, I am a big fan of the Audiolab 9000 range, purely because it wins my heart over every single time, even when my head might tell me something else. And if you have good speakers and subwoofers maybe, then you will reap the benefits of your investment here for every single listening session. But the 9000N, of course, it's not perfect, or it won't be perfect for everybody. Some people are going to look for a product or a streamer that has more flexibility maybe for connections to integrate with lots of different products. That's not what the 9000N is designed to do. Some people might look for other features, more features. Again, the 9000N is a bit more limited in that fashion, but they're good features. They're features that work well. That is its intended design. But while I'm saying that, it's missing a huge feature for me. It's obviously missing direct live room correction. I would love to see that in a product like this, and I always mark down any digital source that doesn't offer direct live room correction, and I mention it all the time, so hopefully manufacturers will one day listen, put it in their products just to shut me up, if nothing else. I've really enjoyed my time with the 9000N. It's been fantastic, sounding absolutely fantastic, much better than I was expecting. And that's really interesting because there's really no surprises here for me. It's an Audiolab product. It's built like one. It sounds like one. It behaves like one. So there's been no real surprises here in that regard, except the 9000N actually sounds better than I was expecting it to. So that probably is, the best surprise that, one could ask for. So I hope you've enjoyed this review. I hope you found it useful and helpful. This is my last review of 2023. So if you've enjoyed all of the reviews up until this point, maybe consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already.